What a time to be a Star Wars fan right now. We got Revenge of the Sith back in theaters, Battlefront 2 is making a comeback, and just last week we got the finale to Andor. Guys, it's not even fair anymore. The Andor trilogy is the best thing to happen to Star Wars ever. There is no competition. The sequels,
Somehow.
no, let's not kid ourselves. The Mandalorian,
Book of
Kenobi,
Boba Fett,
Ahsoka,
Acolyte.
Acolyte. I haven't even seen those last two, and I don't have to, because Andor clears everything Disney Star Wars has ever made and will ever make. It doesn't even make sense. Season 1 of Andor was good. It was still a new thing. Not everyone was on board with it. Like, who wants to watch a show about one of those characters from that one Star Wars movie? Season 2, I can't even describe. The night the final 3 episodes had aired, I had spent the day prior catching up on what I had missed. Essentially, I binged the whole season in a day. And after it wrapped, I physically could not sit with myself. I had to leave the house and go for a drive in the middle of the night to try and rationalize what I had just seen. This isn't a show that I can just pick apart and say, oh, this was bad, I didn't like this. Andor is genuine art. This is the sort of stuff George wished he could make. Andor has nuance. This doesn't follow the very distinct black and white good and evil of the originals and the prequels. Andor blurs the lines. Tony Gilroy, the guy behind it all, his take on Star Wars is way more grounded. Andor takes the framework of the universe and uses it to deliver one of the most compelling narratives ever crafted. This is the definitive rebel story. Andor is about the breaking point. This demonstrates how tight of a grip the Empire has around everyone, around the Senate, around entire planets, even its own Imperials, driving them to rebel. This is about people and how they are pushed to the brink. The reason they do these morally repugnant things is because they are desperate. This is good people doing bad things for the right reasons. Luthen's whole thing is about building something he will never see, fighting the Empire for a better future. His entire monologue in season 1 is the best description of true sacrifice. He knows he's done a lot of bad things and he accepts that he's done them, but he's doing these morally bankrupt things so the rebellion can succeed. He's not a self-righteous being, he's selfless. He could very easily do nothing and live the life he lives under the Empire. But then there's the argument of, would it be less moral to do nothing knowing bad things are happening if you have the power to change it? And that's what Andor is about. George's version of Star Wars was idealistic. Rebels were pure of heart and the Empire was rotten to the core. Gilroy has a more human take on Star Wars, where the rebels are not all good. And I prefer this. It's an evolution to Star Wars. This show isn't about the Jedi or the Sith, it's about real people, the grit of the Star Wars universe, and how they can be transformed into revolutionaries as a result of the Empire's grasp. The entire Gorman arc is really an example of what's happening around the galaxy, how rebels are born. And if you are so thick-headed that you can't accept that this is real Star Wars, then you can't be saved. I'm sorry, it's over for you. This version of Star Wars and George's good and evil version can both coexist. One does not hurt the other. They do not impede on each other, because more to the point, what these rebels are doing, specifically in Andor, is not immoral for the sake of immorality. It is to fight the Empire. Oppression breeds rebellion. There is no moral way to fight a war. Now, I'm not saying that all Star Wars has to be like this from now on, this grimmer, more ambiguous take. I don't know about you guys, but after getting fed garbage for so long, it's nice to take a breath of fresh air. The reason Andor is so gripping is because it's good. But what does that mean? What does it mean when something is good? Is it that the show is shot well? Is it that it has good set design? Is the dialogue attractive? Is the message delivered well? Is there a good synergy between all the storylines? Yes, all of these are yeses. Visually, this is the most interesting Star Wars has been since season 1 of Andor. There's a sense of symmetry. A lot of these shots are right down the middle. It's familiar, it builds character. It's as if a person was shooting this and was actively making creative decisions on how the scene should look, and that extends to the set design. You can tell there was thought and attention that was put into the look of this show, versus these other, CGI slot fests. CGI is good, and I've said this before. I like it when it's it's used to enhance a scene and not act like a crutch for an indecisive creator. And the one character that I want to touch on is Dedra, specifically her ending. Watching this Imperial servant get cucked so hard and end up in the same psychologically engineered hellscape of a prison that Andor is in season 1 makes everything come full circle. It's cruel. We know how awful of a place this prison was, and finding her here in these final moments, I actually gasped. I got flashbacks from season 1. This is a character that wholeheartedly believes in the Empire, and she wants them to succeed, but they humanize her so much more in this season. Having Cyril be there makes her almost likable, and rationally, her fate is deserved. I mean, she's done some unspeakable things, and after all she's done for the Empire, and this is how she's treated, it's kind of sad. Everyone got their perfect end. Bix gets this bittersweet ending. She's finally found her peace, but it's bitter because we know as the audience that she will never see Cassian again, and he will never meet his child. It's sad, but it's perfect. I got goosebumps. And as Andor has been coming back into the mainstream, as there's been more buzz, the one Andor short that I have up on my channel has been, popping off a little bit. And there's this one reply guy that's been fighting in the comments for about 2 weeks now, with all that they have, trying to explain why Andor is fundamentally terrible. It's been a lot of fun reading what they have to say, and I just wanted to respond, even if it is rage bait, because it's just so bad. They start by saying that Andor is about evil versus evil, the pursuit of power, and how that's Marxism, plain and simple, the antithesis of Star Wars. So a few things. All of what they said is wrong. Not only is that not what Andor is about, this show is not evil versus evil when talking about the birth of the rebellion versus the Empire, but also that's not what Marxism is. Marxism is about class struggle. It's about identifying how the working class is exploited for the benefit of the upper class. And to dive a little deeper into Marxist theory, the fight to establish a fair society actually trumps personal morality, which does actually deal with Andor a little bit. So they're kind of right on that, but they're wrong for the reason it's not about gaining power, but that's a misinterpretation of what Marxism is. Now, this show is anti-fascist and does deal with Marxism a little bit, but these two are not the same thing. And claiming this show is bad because it's Marxist and anti-fascist, it's not really the side you want to be on. And claiming this show is antithetical to Star Wars because it's woke, which they define as postmodernism progressiveness, is sad. I hate to break it to you, but Star Wars has always been woke. The originals exclusively deal with revolutionists fighting for a better society at the expense of their personal morality. If murder is immoral, Luke is a super terrorist and incredibly immoral. This is where perspective is required. All that Andor is doing is pulling back the curtain. They reveal why revolution is not clean. Most depictions of the rebels is dressed up as heroic when it really should be considered immorality. Are the Imperials on the Death Star deserving of death because they are part of the fascist structure that the rebellion is inherently against? Does it make it moral to kill hundreds of thousands of Imperials? It's the same argument here, but on a smaller scale. These rebels are desperate and trying to fight the Empire in any way they can, but because of circumstances, they have to get their hands dirty. In both instances, both in the originals and in Andor, the rebels exist because they are sick and tired of the oppression of the Empire, and they want change in the galaxy. They are the ones stepping up, and doing so in a way they can. This is what rebellion is. Now, this commenter, this reply guy, goes on to say that this show doesn't have nuance. Actually, what it's doing is making excuses for immorality. It's what Anakin does in the Clone Wars, and look how that turned out for him. These are their words, by the way. It was at this point that I realized that this person has no idea what Star Wars is and has not watched Andor or Revenge of the Sith, by that matter. Anakin did not turn to the dark side because he would occasionally act morally ambiguous in the Clone Wars TV show. He turned to the dark side out of pure desperation. He believed that Palpatine was the only way to save his wife. He had visions about his mother dying and did not want to make the same mistake. He would do anything to stop Padme from dying, even if it means turning to the dark side. Pushing someone to the brink of sanity will change how they act fundamentally. It's the exact same thing happening in Andor. Because of this systematic oppression, everyday people are rising up. This is rebellion. And this show is a masterclass in portraying that. You can't argue with anything that the rebellion is doing, even if it is morally ambiguous, because of how well Andor portrays the Empire. Every other piece of media softens them up a little bit just to be the cartoonish bad guys, but we see how evil the Empire is in this show, and the choices the rebels make here are all for the betterment of society, to fight this oppression. Now, this commenter doesn't like Andor, and that's fine, you don't have to like it, but going on and on how it's not Star Wars, and furthermore saying that the only person that can dictate what is Star Wars is George Lucas, is why people think that this fandom is terrible. And they're right. It is terrible. If you want to live and die by what George Lucas says, then you shouldn't be watching Star Wars at all, unless you're a child, which you probably are.
You know, it's a film for 12-year-olds.
His movies are for kids. The originals are not very complex films. There's a definitive good guy and a bad guy. That's it. But that's not real life. This show is. Where the originals would make things very black and white, Andor doesn't hold back. And if you don't like that, that's fine. But excusing it as postmodernism, Marxist ideology, you're doing too much. And now watching Rogue One after this show, it just completes this trilogy like the sequels wished they could. The one thing people would always complain about when talking about Rogue One is how the characters are boring, or how no one would care for the characters. Like, who are these people? Which, you know, is a fair criticism, but that problem has been solved. We got 2 seasons of getting to know Cassian. We got 2 seasons of solidifying Andor as the staple rebel. This guy who wants nothing to do with the world, and his evolution into a freedom fighter. Andor is not sacrilegious. It's the realest Star Wars has ever been. And if for some reason you haven't watched this show, go treat yourself. Go enjoy Star Wars again.